Your Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency has over 600,000 acres of public hunting lands available to sportsmen. To find out where those areas are in your neck of the woods, pick up a copy of the latest hunting guide or log on to tnwildlife.org. This week on Tennessee Outdoor Journal, we'll start off with turkey research, sampling station locations.
Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency was on hand to do weights and measurements for the competition.
Next up, Archery 101, arrows.
Help your broadhead cut better if you hit bone or backside shoulder, something like that.
And we'll finish off with a Drop the Tailgate, food plots and seeding rates.
Acre, you should sow approximately 24 pounds of seed from this bag.
Tennessee Outdoor Journal is opening the cover and inviting you in for some outdoor tips, tricks, and behind-the-scenes look at the work being done by your Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Let's turn the page. What kind of legacy will we leave when our days upon this earth are gone? Tell me who will carry on this work that we've begun, care enough to be the keeper of the dream. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Tennessee Outdoor Journal.
The 2021 Tennessee Governor's One-Shot Turkey Hunt was a huge success. Despite wind and rain, hunters and guides harvested over 60 birds.
Beard is 6 5/8.
The Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency was on hand to do weights and measurements for the competition, but also collect samples from hunter-harvested birds.
We are in cooperation with UT to do turkey research on the turkey population and disease potential in the population. About 6 years ago, we did this same type of thing where we collected samples from the turkey and we sent them off to UT. They looked at them, and so now they want to just go ahead 6 years later and look at the birds and see if they've been exposed to other diseases or parasites, or if the loads of the disease has changed. So we've been working real hard on our end and UT's end and trying to figure out why we are having this perceived decline in turkey populations, because we want to know as much as anybody what's happening.
This weekend, April 17th, marks the opening of turkey season in Lincoln, Giles, Lawrence, and Wayne counties. And the TWRA will be on site. Sampling stations will be set up in multiple areas.
So as a hunter, if you want to participate in this project, you can bring your hunter harvested birds to one of these locations, and we'll give you back your fan, your beard, your spurs. We'll even breast the bird for you and give that all back to you, and we'll keep the carcass so that we can take tissue samples to send off to UT and see what we can find. When we're collecting tissue samples, we're taking pieces of the internal organs, such as the lung, the kidneys, part of the heart. We're looking at the digestive tract. So we're looking at those places where disease might present itself. We may not know or find a smoking gun per se that says this is why our bird populations have gone down, but it'll help give us a better picture about management. And maybe along the way we will see something that could point us in a direction that we could focus on and help out.
Hey guys, Michael Parsley here with the TWRA. Once again, we're at Archery Den, and we're going to teach y'all and tell y'all about how to pick an arrow and what grain and all of that. And I'm here with Matt Eddy, and he's going to help us find that out. Matt, take it away.
So choosing the arrow is almost as important as choosing the bow. There's times when you can choose the wrong arrow depending on the game that you're hunting. And say if you're too underspined, you may break an arrow on impact and not get the penetration that you're looking for. The arrow directly, the spine directly correlates into what poundage and what draw length you're shooting. So for instance, somebody shooting a 50-pound bow, with a 27-inch draw length, they may need a 400 spine. That means the arrow has a little more flex, and the poundage is going to make that arrow fly straighter, whereas a 400 spine on a 70-pound bow is going to flex a lot. The arrow is not going to recover in time, and you're going to have some erratic groups. A 70-pound bow with a normal 29-inch draw length is going to need a stiffer arrow, like a 340 or even a 300 in certain instances. The stiffer the spine arrow, the heavier the arrow weighs. So for hunting and penetration, kinetic energy wise, what you're looking for is you're going to want an arrow that is 400 grains plus, in my opinion. And what that does, it helps your momentum going forward once you make contact with the animal. And it's also going to help your broadhead cut better if you hit bone or backside shoulder, something like that. It's going to keep the arrow from breaking as much. So there's many different things you can do to increase the weight of your arrow. You can add a luminoc, a lighted knock, for example, to your arrow. That's going to help you see that arrow in flight. You can also weight down, choose different weight heads, 100 grain field points, 125 grain field points. You can even do weighted inserts to increase your FOC. What that's doing is that's helping to stabilize the arrow a little bit quicker.
You said FOC. What does FOC mean?
Front of center. Increasing your front of center is going to help stabilize that arrow. It adds more weight to the front of the shaft, and it's going to get you a little bit more penetration and momentum to keep that arrow driving forward as you shoot. So most arrows are fletched with one odd color vein and two veins of the same color. We call this vein the cock vein. These are the hen veins. The reason they're fletched like that is so you can acquire which one is the cock vein quickly. In most arrow rest, you're going to put the cock vein up through the rest. Some guys like to fletch them all one color. Everything in archery is a fashion show. So we want to ensure that we can acquire which one is the cock vein and do it quickly in case we need a second shot or something like that. And that also, what that does, the reason we need the cock vein up in most rests is that gives us the clearance. You see here in the whisker biscuit, the veins, we want the veins touching all brown bristles, and we want them in the same density of bristles. So that is the purpose of having an odd colored vein, your cock vein, and having two of another color is just to acquire that cock vein quickly.
Okay. Now, is that everything we need to know about picking out a correct arrow for your bow?
That is it, and come into us and let us help determine the spine. We don't want anybody shooting the wrong spine and not getting the performance out of their bow that they may get otherwise.
Okay. We're standing here in front of a lot of a great selection of arrowheads, or broadheads that people could shoot out of their compound bow. How does the weight of the broadhead factor into what you're shooting?
So what you're shooting, what you're practicing with your field tips, you want to shoot the same grain broadhead. That weight out here on the end, like I said, more weight on the end increases your front of center, your FOC. It's going to get you a little more kinetic energy and momentum. You want to stick with the same grain for hunting, though. We practice all year long. We get our bow sighted in with a 100 grain field tip, and then you put a 125 grain broadhead on. We're not sighted in anymore. Broadheads are not cheap, and they're typically not reusable, so you're going to have to buy new broadheads if you're going to go practice with your broadheads. There's a couple of different kinds of broadheads out there. One being expandable, two being a fixed blade broadhead. Differences in expandables is vast. Fixed blade broadheads are just that. They're fixed. They never change.
So these mechanical heads, they open on impact and make a wider cutting area, correct?
Most open on impact, like these Rage hypodermic no collars, they open on impact on the outside. You get a big entrance hole and you get a big exit hole. There's other expandables, such as the Swacker here, that doesn't open until it goes into the deer. You might get a small entrance hole, but the exit wound is going to be your large hole. By getting a smaller entrance wound, it helps that arrow get the complete pass through, and keep its forward momentum, ensuring that you get that exit hole.
Okay, and that's what you want. You want a complete pass-through.
Complete pass-through. I don't want an arrow sticking out of a deer that's going to hinder my blood trail. I want to recover that deer quick, and I don't like getting on my hands and knees and looking for blood.
Right. And these fixed blades, they are what they are, fixed, right? They don't move. They're not like these expandables.
Absolutely. Fixed blades, you got what you got. They're typically a smaller cutting diameter, but they're tried and true. For example, when shooting a crossbow, some of these crossbows are so fast that an expandable may open when you shoot it, or it may not open because the crossbow is too fast. That's why we recommend a fixed blade broadhead for crossbows, fixed blade broadhead for kids, because it doesn't take as much kinetic energy to get that broadhead moving forward on impact of a deer. Another thing about fixed broadhead versus expandable is if you're planning on going on an elk hunt, say this season, or you're lucky enough to get drawn on the Tennessee elk hunt, or you're going out west, we prefer a fixed blade broadhead over an expandable for elk. The reason being, an elk's rib is generally almost the size of a white-tailed deer's shoulder. It's hard enough to get penetration when you hit shoulder on a white-tailed deer. It's hard to get good penetration. You're almost never going to get a pass-through on an elk. So cutting a 2-inch hole in an elk rib, or cutting 2 to 3 ribs, is not practical for getting penetration. A good, sharp, fixed blade broadhead that doesn't have to move is going to get you better penetration and make sure that you get that double lung shot and put that elk down as quick as possible.
Well, there you have it, guys. Come on out to the Archery Den. Let them help you pick out the correct arrow and the correct broadhead for your bow.
Hey, I'm Jamie Feddersen. I'm TWRA's Migratory Game Bird Program Leader. Did you know that our biologists and technicians spend time every summer banding Canada geese, wood ducks, and mourning doves? Each year, we put on about 2,000 bands on resident Canada geese, and we put about 800 on wood ducks, and about 500 or 600 on mourning doves. And the information we get from these bands is helpful information for us to use to keep track of where these birds are moving. It gives us information about harvest, and it fits into some of the information we need to set season dates and bag limits for these birds. So if you ever harvest a bird that's got one of these bands on it, please report that band. There's information on the band about where to go and what to submit, and all that information is really important for us to make good decisions managing Tennessee's wildlife.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Drop the Tailgate. I'm Barry Cross, the Region 2 Communications and Education Coordinator. And today I've got Clint Borum, the private lands biologist from Middle Tennessee with me, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about food plots and what we may be doing wrong on our food plots, and we don't even know we're doing it wrong. He's going to give us some tips on how to maximize the benefits from those food plots. And Clint, thanks for joining me today. And what are we doing wrong?
Yeah, Barry, it's a big subject. You know what I mean? Food plots are the buzzword with everybody, and it's that time of year. You know, we're in September now. It's time to be planting fall food plots, and so I'm getting a lot of questions about it. So it's great timing that we put this together, this Drop the Tailgate together. But I wanted to get out there several common mistakes that are made when planting food plots. Of course, one of the first ones that I see a lot is, where do you get your recommendations from?
Now, I always get them off the back of the bag. Whatever that bag says, I just throw it out there and hope for the best.
Well, with so much TV and so much internet and different things out there, a lot of people are putting out food plot recommendations. A couple of things that you need to take into account are the fact that people may be recommending food plot mixtures for areas that are not the southeast. all right?
Yeah.
Some of these areas may be up in Wisconsin or Minnesota,
Kansas, Iowa.
Kansas, Iowa. And by the way, the climates there are a lot different than they are down here, okay? They're going to get a lot harsher winter, a lot shorter growing season, maybe less rainfall, and you have to take all those things into account with the species that you're planting into your food plot. So a big mistake is where people get their recommendations, and one of my solutions to that is I really am an ambassador for your local extension office. All right, your ag extension office. And in Tennessee, the University of Tennessee has an outstanding extension program, much less they have a phenomenal wildlife extension program at UT. And so they put out a ton of publications on food plots or wildlife management in general, but even better, a lot of publications on food plots specifically that are more tailored to the Southeast or even the state of Tennessee. So that's the first place. If I'm looking for a recommendation on a food plot, what to plant in this part of the world, that's where I'm going to go.
So you really need to take in consideration what our growing season is, I guess, and that kind of thing, and how much rainfall we actually get in this area.
Yeah, it's critical when you look at the type of species that you're going to put into your planting mixture, okay? Most people don't know this, but we get 60 plus inches of rainfall a year in Tennessee. We're about 10 inches of rainfall away from being considered a temperate rainforest, okay?
Wow.
And our growing season pretty much runs from March all the way through the end of September. So that's a long growing season with a lot of rainfall.
So when you look at somebody's property, do you recommend a lot of food plots? Is that how you go about this? Or?
No, not necessarily. Really, the first step when I go out and meet with a landowner is we're going to zoom out. We call it the zoom out approach. And we're going to look at that property from the 30,000 foot view. It's basically going to be a 5-mile circle, and I'm going to assess what's missing, what's not here on this property that needs to be here to make game want to be here. And a lot of times in Middle Tennessee, which is the 26 counties that I work, you see 2 or 3 main components. One is fescue or cool season grass, pasture or hay ground. You see crop ground, and you see woodlands. The one component that's typically missing is early successional cover. And so that's what we're going to focus on first. But when you implement those areas of early succession, you can supplement those with a good food plot program.
And when you're talking early successional, that means like maybe cutting back some of the forest and letting it grow up. Is that what you're talking about?
It could be part of it, but a lot of it is just taking the current openings that you have and managing them for the correct species of natural regeneration. Getting rid of these cool season grasses and allowing things like ragweed, pokeweed, beggar's lice, prickly lettuce, blackberry,
all that nasty stuff,
all those weeds everybody talks about. But in reality, what's critical is those weeds, Barry, run anywhere from 15 to 20% protein for a white-tailed deer, and they exist on the landscape from basically March all the way through the end of September. You can't buy a bag of deer feed at Co-op that has that much protein in it.
And that's one thing somebody told me one time. You know, I'm more concerned about oak trees and acorns. Well, that doesn't last like this early successional habitat does it? I mean, the acorns are only there for a little while.
Very short amount of time. Number one, oaks are cyclic. And there's no biologist on the planet that knows the cycle of an oak, okay? It could be once every 2 years, it could be once every 5 years, and believe it or not, a majority of oak trees in the wild don't ever produce acorns. So let's say that it does produce acorns. That food source is only viable for about a month to a month and a half out of the year, and when it gets rained on the ground and begins to swell, it becomes a non-viable food source for deer specifically.
Yeah.
So it's a very short availability of food, and it's limited.
So how do we supplement? What are we messing up whenever we're going to plant our food plots? How do we fix our problem?
Well, we could spend a full 3-hour episode just talking about food plots today, but I'll hit some high notes and show some common mistakes that are made. Again, one, where do I get my recommended mixtures for planting? In Tennessee, I would highly recommend going through the University of Tennessee Ag Extension Program or Wildlife Extension. There are a ton of publications on food plots and food plot management that the Wildlife Extension puts out through UT. You can get good recommendations on seeding mixtures. The second thing we're going to look at is, we're not really supplementing the diet of a white-tailed deer because 75% of their diet is browse, okay? Yeah. But we're looking to hold those deer over during those critical months, basically December, January, and February, okay? We can talk today about warm season plantings versus cool season plantings. We can talk about annual food plots versus perennial food plots, but I'm not really going to get that deep into it today. But all those things need to be taken into account.
That's where you go talk to your private land biologist and get more information. But what are we talking about today?
Well, today I want to talk about the second common mistake that I see on food plot planting, and that is not getting the correct seeding rate on your plot. A lot of people tend to unknowingly underplant their food plots.
And then they wonder why it looks so patchy.
Yeah, a lot of times it can cause patchiness or unevenness or not a good stand per se on your food plot. So what most people don't understand is you buy this bag of seed and you expect everything in that bag to be seed.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's not.
Okay?
Why?
It's not?
There's so much inert material within that bag that you may have to alter your planting rate to reach the correct pounds per acre that you need to be planting. And I'll go through an example here if you want me to.
Yeah. Show us what we need to know.
Yeah, so I've basically drawn out what a seed tag on a bag would look like, okay? And here's a bag of wheat, here's the seed tag on it. There's a lot of information on that tag, okay? Right. So we did an example of, say, crimson clover. Let's say you're gonna plant a clover food plot and you're gonna put crimson clover in it, okay? All this information is on this seed tag. Okay. But in reality, there's a couple of things that are really important to me as a planter. One of those is the amount of pure seed that's in that bag, which is listed here, and the germination rate of the seed that's in that bag, okay? With those two numbers, I can determine what the pure live seed amount is in that bag. And when you get planting recommendations, they are in the form of pure live seed. So if I say, Barry, you need to plant 10 pounds per acre of pure live seed of crimson clover, that is different than 10 pounds per acre of clover, okay? Okay. So when you take the pure seed, which is 99.7% converted over to a decimal, and you multiply it by the germination rate, which was 85% according to our tag, you get 0.847, or when you convert that back over to a percentage, 84% PLS or pure live seed in that bag, which means there's almost 16% of inert material in that bag, okay? Yeah. So if we know our desired planting rate, which on crimson clover, we're gonna recommend 20 pounds per acre in this particular plot. Yeah. That's what we wanna sow in the ground. We divide that by our PLS, and that will give us the actual rate of seed in this bag that we need to plant to reach 20 pounds per acre. So in order to plant 20 pounds of this crimson clover per acre, you should sow approximately 24 pounds of seed from this bag. So you were shorting yourself 4 pounds per acre of actual live seed if you just weighed out 20 pounds and put it out on that acre.
And that's a lot of seed.
That's a lot of seed, especially if you get seed tags that have germination rates in the 60%.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna have to plant almost 50% higher rate to put out the actual amount of seed that you want on that plot. And I actually had that problem this fall with some of my clover plots. Some of the clover germination was running at 68, 65%. So I had to bump my rate up
Almost
from
twice, yeah.
10 pounds to nearly 16 or 17 pounds per acre to get the correct amount of seed in the ground that I wanted. These seeds, specifically clover seed, they come with all this coating on them.
Yeah.
A big coating. It's inoculate a lot of times, and it makes up a lot of weight in that bag. So the actual amount of seed is lower than what you think it is in that bag. So calculating these numbers and determining the actual rate that you need to plant can make a huge difference on the success of your food plot.
Man, that is great information. And this is the kind of thing that if you have questions about what you're doing on your property, you can contact Clint or another private land biologist in the region to find out how to maximize what you're getting, because you're putting in the work. You ought to get everything out of it that you can. Great information. If somebody wants to get in touch with you or find out more information, where should they go?
Yeah, don't let me mess this up, Barry. It's www.tnwildlife-habitat.com.
All right, there you go. Rewind it and listen to it again. Clint, I appreciate you coming out. I hope we can do some more of these, because this is the kind of information that people who are working their own land are looking for. And I think this is beneficial to those that are the folks that really want to get into hunting, or maybe you're already into hunting and you're not seeing what you want to see. This guy right here can help you out on your property and maximize whatever benefit you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, and the reality of it is, a lot of us just don't have a ton of time. We want to make sure we get it right the first time.
That's right.
I don't want to have to come back and redo something I've already done because my time is limited. So taking into account these sorts of things will help you ensure better success the first time. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Brad Miller, Elk Program Leader for TWRA. Did you know we have elk hunting opportunities here in Tennessee? We started our elk hunt program in 2009 with just 5 permits, but we're now up to 15 permits, opportunities to hunt with archery equipment, rifles, youth hunts. We also have an elk raffle tag. It's a great opportunity to hunt our very best zone, and you get extra gear with that tag as well. So for more information about hunting elk in Tennessee, go to tnwildlife.org.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Tennessee Outdoor Journal. We'll see you next time. Tennessee Outdoor Journal is produced by your Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency.
Tell me who will carry on.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lawrence, just letting you know that the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency supports itself and manages all of the state's wildlife with the dollars invested by hunters and fishermen when they buy licenses. If you've never bought a license, but appreciate the abundant wildlife we enjoy in this state, I encourage you to do it. Start with the Type 01. It's a great investment in Tennessee wildlife. Learn more at tnwildlife.org.
Buy your license today at GoOutdoorsTennessee.com.